My name's Lenny Ryan. I'm a University of Florida emeritus librarian, and I work on the Research for Life projects, which are the programs that grant access to e-books, e-journals, other resources in developing countries, and that was covered pretty much in the first three. So today I'd like to talk a little about websites, resources, databases that are agriculture related that are available for searching. This is kind of open access information. And then I'll review the more general ones that we talked about in the last webinar. And then I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Leonard. I am a science librarian at the Marston Science Library at the University of Florida. And one of my liaison duties is animal sciences. So I'm happy to be here today with Feed the Future and working with Lenny on bringing library resources to you. Today, I will focus on responsible conduct of research and research integrity in scientific practices.
Oh, now we're supposed to keep talking?
Tell us about your life.
No. I'm supposed to keep talking while Jim leaves the room. I just have been, for the last 12 years, I've been working on these Research for Life projects and doing a lot of training and writing training material, which is a nice sort of semi-retirement, but not really retirement. But I get to work out of my home, which is much better, and not have too many day-long meetings. So.
All right, thank you for those introductions, and I'm going to turn the camera back to me for a moment. All right, so hi. We're just waiting for participants to come in, and hopefully they will. And it actually doesn't matter too much at this point because we are recording this so that people who don't watch it live can come back and access it from our website and can share these materials later on. So what I'm going to do is talk about, for a moment, the other webinars that we had. And we'll review them actually at the end. I have a slide that just lists them, and you can also find them on the website. Okay, we've got some more participants, so that's good. The 5 topics that we had previously, we talked about the introduction to the Research for Life programs, accessing and searching Agora for research literature. What's the second one? The third webinar was search strategies for successful literature reviews. How to store your references and content was 2 weeks ago, and now today we have the final webinar on ethics in research publications. All right, so I think we should go ahead and get started. So I want to say welcome to everyone. My name is Jim Harper. I'm with the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. We're coming to you live from the University of Florida. We have 2 special guests who are expert librarians who are going to share knowledge with us today. And we hope that you take this to heart and also share this with your friends. So today's webinar about library access for success is about ethics in research publications. And this is the 5th webinar in a series of 5. And these are all recorded and available for you, as well as going live on Facebook. So please visit our website if you have not already, and you'll find the other 4 webinars, plus this one, will be uploaded and shared as well. All right, so now I'm going to turn things over to our esteemed librarians and have them briefly introduce themselves. Okay, Lenny.
Yes, hello, I'm Lenny Ryan. As I said previously, I'm a UF emeritus librarian, worked in the health library for many years, and now I do training and write training material for these Research for Life projects, which includes Agora, which is access to agriculture-related information for low-income countries.
I'm Michelle Leonard. I'm a science librarian at the Marston Science Library, University of Florida.
Okay, let's go and get started. Lenny?
Okay, so this is listed as ethics, but we also wanted to get back into looking at free resources on the internet. This was part of the 3rd webinar, and I'll review that part later on, but we found 4 or 5 really useful agriculture-related internet repositories and databases. So this does not matter if you're eligible for this Agora program and have registered for that or not. Okay, so these are free resources. So the first one we have is Agris. And then, am I flipping them or you want to flip? Okay. And then there's a
Did you want to go through this list here?
Okay, I'm going to discuss the key ones today are Agris, CIGAR, Iowa State Digital Library. There's one from the local UF library about agriculture stats, and then there's USAIN. Okay, and then we'll very quickly go over the other ones in case you missed it, because then you can go back and do searches on your own and use these other resources. Okay, so we're going to start with Agris, which is a large multilingual biographical database. It claims, maintained by Food and Agriculture Organization, it claims to have over 9 million bibliographic references from 40 databases. Okay, and it says 114 countries have contributed. Key issue is it has keyword search option with the ability to add filters, which we've discussed previously. So let's look at this briefly. The next slide. And this is what the initial page looks like. Note the search options. Search in Agris, refine your search, get bibliographic data, and access a resource. Okay, so we have been pretty much doing a similar search in the other webinars. So we'll go back to high protein forage and dairy production and see what comes up in Agris, this huge database. Okay, we have 102 resources. Note that you can change the order. You can look at subcategories that are listed down on the bottom left. And I think there is a language filter. Okay, so this is one tool where you can search your own specific agriculture related issues and come up with free resources. Okay, the next one is CIGAR, an open access repository of documents produced by this consortium. So again, everything in this is available to everyone. The only problem is we just tried to open this and the search was not working right. So let me show you what I have, and then you may have to play a little to find it. This is the initial page, okay? Is this the live one?
No, this is a PowerPoint.
This is my slide.
Yes.
Okay. If you go to the next one.
Okay.
Oh, I see what's happening. The mute line, the horizontal bar, go back one, and the horizontal bar is covering where you have to click. Okay. You see, aha, there it is. So when I did this 3 days ago, we had access through clicking on the 3 horizontal bars. It opens up this page. It's very cumbersome, I'll admit that. Next slide.
Now it's changed.
Yeah. And at the bottom, after you hit those 3 bars, the symbol there, you get a search box, high protein forage and dairy production. So it takes a while to find how to search in this, and it seems to be a bit of a moving target. Again, we ran the search and we came up with 501 results on high protein forage and dairy production. We can search most anything that you want in the field in either of these databases. So that's a second one that appears, if you can find the search page, to give you good results. Okay, the third one is a repository, digital repository from Iowa State University, and it includes thesis and dissertations, journal articles, and conference proceedings, things that may not be published in referee journals. Okay, so we opened this one, and there's a very nice search box on the left, and if you click in this repository, you can actually search multiple repositories. But we just did the same search in the Iowa State Digital Repository for Agriculture, and came up with 409 results. Now, I'm not sure if they carry if the same material is in each repository or not, but you can see this one's pretty clean, and it gives you the ability to download the articles straightforward, most probably as PDFs. Okay, so those are 3 resources that are free, useful, and focusing on agriculture. Again, anybody can use them anywhere. You can be in a developing country, you can be in an emerging country, you can be in at UF and still use these, University of Florida and still use these resources. This comes from the George A. Smathers Libraries, which is where Michelle is currently. Excuse me? And there are some agriculture statistics available here. Did you want to say something about this? No. So you can go down and look at the statistical resources and you can get some that are dealing with agriculture. Okay, so that's another tool that may be of use to you. Okay, next we have, this is an interesting little website. It's an annotated bibliography, basically, with links to various tools that would be good for users in developing countries. The thing that makes me laugh is every time I see Usain, I think of the runner, Usain Bolt. So that's how I remember this one.
And if you Google it, it'll come up.
And it'll come up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Usain
Usain Bolt will come up, even if he's retired, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, he's a very successful runner with a lot of Olympic medals.
Yep.
So this will, if you're interested in learning about other resources that may be relevant and mostly free if you're in a developing country, this is a good list to turn to. Note the second one listed there is Agora, which is access to global online research in agriculture and was discussed and featured in the first two webinars. Okay, so now we might do a little search, okay? Does anyone have a quick example of something they want to search, or you can search on your own? Let's flip over, and Michelle, can you come up with a term we should search? Or Jim? Or
On Agris, we're going to go
yeah,
to
we're going to go to
Agris.
Agris. We're going to do quick.
Okay.
The second one we have to skip, though, unfortunately.
Just a moment.
Okay, share. So now
Okay.
we're live, and we're going to put in a search term. Okay, sustainable livestock. Looks good to me. And there are 2,900 articles using these keyword terms. So then you could refine it further, maybe put developing countries just for fun if you wanted. And you can see, yeah, and there's a nice list of subcategories. And we have now, which one did you click
I
on?
clicked on livestock production.
Livestock production. And that's really relevant to what this project is about, if I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so that was very good. Rural Tanzania, rural poverty, decision-making in livestock. Okay, so this was a successful example. The second one, I don't know.
We were going to look here, but then we had trouble finding. They changed the website.
Just click there for anyway and see what. Click in the top right and see if anything happens.
Nope.
No. So
Nope.
we have to do our homework and have an addendum. Okay, so we'll go to the third one, the Iowa State one, and let's run the same search. So you can see these tools are pretty functional. Okay, sustainable livestock. And about a similar number, isn't that correct? Okay, and let's just pick one and see if the download opens. That might be
One of these. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do the second one.
Open. Now we understand some people may have better bandwidth than others, but this seems to
It
be
looks like it's working.
Yeah.
There we go.
okay. And it's from the Digital Repository of Iowa State. Okay, so we've had some success here. Now let me spend no more than 10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, no more than 10 minutes. We'll go back to the PowerPoint. We don't know what happened to Seagar today. And very briefly, that's the exercise. So we're going to do a review.
We're going to do a review. Okay.
Okay, is that all right with everyone?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to review ones that were presented, it's about 4 weeks ago. Okay, and then just to get you a broader perspective, we won't do any searches in this, but we'll just review these. Okay. First of all, you need to know that Scholar is a good source. because it's more peer-reviewed academic thesis books, abstracts. It's more scientific and research-oriented. There was a long discussion of if you have access to this Agora, and you go to Agora, and you go to databases for discovery, and you pull up Scholar, there will be more links to the full text. Besides the free ones, some of the commercial ones will be accessible. But that's an aside for now. I just wanted to mention Scholar again. I've been to many workshops where I say, how many people use Scholar? And they say, I just Google it. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. Okay. Directory of Open Access Journals. It's got 1.6 million, 1.7 million articles now. Okay. There's all kinds of hybrids and weird journals that get in here, but they have to have some level of open access, and they have to allow their material to be in this searchable database. Okay, so did we do a search here? I think on the next slide. Okay, we came up with 31 citations on high protein forage and dairy production, I think. It got lost there. Mm-hmm. So again, you have, you can search by keyword, you can search by subject here, you can search by publisher. But what these publishers have done is registered this as we are open access journals, or we are making these articles available, and therefore you can search it outside of any commercial program, outside of Agora, and still get some resources. Next one. This is kind of funny. It says PubMed Central, right? So everyone's thinking, oh, this is about medicine. This is really now a repository of over 5 million articles, where if you publish an article after a grant with many U.S. governmental agencies, you have to put a copy of the article here. Okay, so what you're seeing is, oh, all these commercial publishers, they publish it, they restrict access, but a copy of the article is in this database. And it is broader than just health. It's just the name is misleading. So I think we did so here's how you access it. And we did do a search, I think. Here we are. High protein forage and dairy production in developing countries. Now, why is this in something that says medical? But here it's a big database now, and you have access to 277 articles, and there's the PDF version, and you can click on that and get the full text. So I'm just suggesting this is a tool that's worth looking at, even if it's for agriculture-related subjects. Okay, next, OpenEye. Now, why are we in an open access biomedical image search engine? Again, every image that is in a PubMed Central article is listed here. They're all freely accessible, and they're all downloadable, and you will find possibly some relevant graphics for your agriculture subjects. So I think we did the same search. Let's see. High protein forage, we made it a little succinct, clearer. So if you click on any of the graphics, you get the explanation, you get the citation, you get all that information. And if you right click, you can download it. So again, this is worth looking for, especially if you're going to make a presentation and you're developing a PowerPoint. There may be some useful open access free images. Okay, next. There are two very interesting, I call them interesting, because now we're back in Google. And you know, when you search in Google, you get huge results. But these are Google custom searches for non-governmental organizations is the first one. So any NGO that has anything in there about high protein forage and dairy production will be listed here. We're hoping the relevancy ranking works because you have over 1.6 million citations, and the most useful articles are listed first. Of course, the first thing I would do is try to make the search more precise, right? And that was what Michelle was talking about the other day. Okay, so this is non-governmental organizations. Let's get in. Okay, World Agriculture Forestry Organization. They do a research, they do a report. It's not going to be in the referee journals. So this is why it's useful to look at this information. Next one is intergovernmental organizations, okay? So you have to basically do, in Google, you search intergovernmental organization search engine, and 3 or 4 things will come up, and you'll see one that looks like this site. So we clicked on it, we did the same search, and now we have 1.3 million. I hope, again, that the relevancy is there. Note, it's pulling FAO, Food and Agriculture, FAO articles first, okay? So this may be a good tool to get into those agencies that you know so much about and find relevant material. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm not always a fan of this one, but it will go into 99 international and scientific databases and do searches. The problem is that many of them will lead you to where you have to pay. It's not free full text. It's not open access. So this is why, but you can do a very interesting global search here. Okay, next one is this one, ndltd.org. We click on global ETD search, okay? Look, 5 million theses and dissertations. Very useful if you're starting a research project or if you're doing a literature search. Okay, so we will do the search, our famous search, high protein forage and dairy production in developing countries from the search.ndltd.org. Every time I type in NDLTD, I type it wrong. Okay, that's enough. That one, and there's a ICDDR apostrophe B, which is a diarrhea research organization, Bangladesh. I get that one wrong all the time too. Okay, 92 theses and dissertations. And note there are a list of related subjects that you could look up. And it gives it to you in languages and then tagged with search, agriculture, or different fields. I think this is a good tool to use when you're starting the project. Okay. Open Door is a directory of 2,600 academic open access repositories. Many universities, many research organizations in developing countries want to get research that people have done or thesis that people have done onto the internet, and they set up these repositories. Many of them are DSpace, which is a free program out of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay, so you're allowed to search the repository. So click to the next one and look at any subject area. There are 154 repositories about agriculture, food, and veterinary science. Theoretically, you should be able to search in these. Some work better than others. Some have better links to full text than others. But there it is, 154 repositories on agriculture. So that's another useful tool. I'm not always sure about this search tool, but it claims to, I can't even, 125 million?
That's what it says.
That's what it says. Articles. Open access research papers. So I'm not always comfortable with the results that come up, but we did our little search, and I don't know how in the world it's showing 9 million articles. 1.8 million articles in English.
There we go.
Okay. So you may have to make your search more precise here, or add develop. I think we did add developing countries. So as I said, I'm not always sure about the results of this, but you can scroll down. If it's sorted by relevance, you could scroll down and maybe find some really relevant articles. And of course, there is a link to the PDF. I think I'm going to stop here. I hope this review was useful. It is broader than the ones we initially looked at, which are agriculture focused, but you can see that these tools should be able to give you some access to relevant information and get the full text. Okay?
And then this exercise is something that
They could do
viewers can
on your own.
On your own time.
Yeah, we
Great.
just don't have the time today because
I've been waiting to hear, Michelle is an expert on these ethics issues, and I've been waiting to hear a presentation to borrow some of her slides, although I will give her credit for them.
Do you want to switch?
No, if you just slide over, I think
I
that we're
just get out
fine.
of
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a good segue into the responsible conduct of research in science. So throughout these webinars, we've showed you how to search, what databases to use. We talked about citation management with Mendeley a few weeks ago. And so now we're going to wrap it up and put it all together in responsible conduct of research, because what do you do with all this literature? Okay, so just a little about me, because this kind of deviates from traditional librarianship, but I got into research integrity research and responsible conduct of research about 8 years ago. I do teach a class, a 4-credit class for the University of Florida on research integrity, and I plan on putting all that material online soon. And I've also had some grants to develop plagiarism online games. And I am pretty active in academic integrity here on campus. So the session goals for today, I want to take a step back and talk about the research project management lifecycle. I spoke a little bit about it last week with the citation management, but it's a really good refresher. So when you are working on a research project, when you don't know where to start, understanding the life cycle is very important. Then we'll go into the 9 components of responsible conduct of research and kind of break it down for you. Then I will specifically focus on one component of research misconduct, which is the falsification, fabrication of data, and avoiding plagiarism. So as a refresher from last time, and this is from the Open Science Foundation, the Research Project Management Lifecycle. You start with search and discovery and developing an idea. So you can, like I said last week, swap these 2 ideas. If you have an idea, you can look at the literature and see if anything is out there. Or when you're searching the literature, and we gave you a lot of databases, looking at review articles always leads to this is what is a gap in literature. So it's a great way to develop your own new research ideas, your research questions, etc. Then you have to develop the design study. You have to come up with a good research question. And this is where a lot of issues happen with research integrity, compromising research integrity, because the design was poorly planned, the question wasn't well thought out. So that's really where this all starts. Then acquiring the materials, whether it's lab materials, whether it's additional research that you need to get your funding, etc. Then you move into the data management practices, data analysis of collecting the data, storing the data. How do you store it? Who owns it? Where do you put it? How do you organize it? So all of that information is very vital. And then the analysis of the data, which we'll go into in depth in a few more slides, interpreting the data, the results, as well as then you write up your report, whether that's a journal article, conference proceedings, and then you get it published. So hopefully it'll be in a peer review process somewhere. But what's left out of this circle is also the post-publishing evaluation. So the transparency. What do your colleagues around the world think about your article? How can it be improved? What were your data methods? But this comprises the research project management lifecycle. So responsible conduct of research, and what is it? This is actually a definition. It's federal policy here in the US. It's defined as scientific investigation with integrity, knowing and understanding the applications, the professional norms, because every discipline has their own norms, their own cultures within the disciplines of how research is conducted, and the principles in performance, integrity as it relates to the overall scientific research. So there are several components of responsible conduct of research. You have your research misconduct, which we'll go over in later slides, which is the falsification of data, fabrication of data, and plagiarism. You also have the protection of human subjects and animal resources. So the IRB in the United States, institutional review boards, where you submit your questions and your plans to a campus governing body, and they approve or have you revise and modify your human subjects. You see a lot of this in medical research with the clinical trials, but you can also see it in non-medical, such as qualitative and quantitative surveys that come out of sociology or education or psychology. Anytime you want to survey a population, you need to go through an institutional review board process. And this protects not only the integrity of the research, but also the research participants. You also have the animal resources, the IACUCs. So a lot of veterinary and animal sciences, protecting the welfare of the animals. Data management practices, that can also fall under the research misconduct, but what is your data management plan? You know, you really have to think about how are you going to collect the data, who's going to analyze it, how it's interpreted, where it's stored, all of those components. Conflicts of interest, this is very important because this is where transparency falls. So if you're doing research for a grant, you need to indicate that this is grant funded to show transparency. If you're doing a medical study, is a pharmaceutical company paying? So you need to let your readers know who's funding your research. Collaborative research, this is obviously very important, especially for this grant, the Feed the Future, because it's global in nature. So everyone needs to be on the same page and have clear policies, clear definition of roles of who's doing what, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, and the reporting structure. Then you get into the ethics of authorship and publication. So I'll talk a little bit about that under the umbrella of research misconduct, but you know, the principles of authorship vary in different fields. So, you know, in astrophysics, you can have 1,000 authors on a single article, and that's the norm in their field, where say in the humanities or arts, it's one author and that's more prestigious. And the natural sciences maybe fall somewhere in between, you know, maybe anywhere from 5 authors to, if you're doing a global, up to 20 or 30, depending on the team. Peer review process, there are several types of peer review, and they're always looking for, is it true, is it new, and is it of interest? And so that's a glossy overview. But, you know, what type of review, especially when you're submitting to articles? Is it just a single blind where the peer reviewer knows you, but you don't know the peer review? Or is it a double blind where the author is not known and the peer reviewer is not known? Then there's the open collaborative peer review or the post peer review. So there's a lot of different types of peer review that you need to be aware of and what you're comfortable with when submitting to journals. You have the mentor and mentee relationship. So this is very good as far as good scientific research practices, because you want to learn from someone who's on the same page as far as ethics, who can teach you about responsible research, and you can go to for questions, because you will become, you know, a future scientist, you'll be leading your own projects. So having that good mentoring role is very important. So this kind of rolls out the RCR as it's defined. Now, some in, say, engineering or some of the medical sciences, biomedical engineering, you have the dual use technology, which is using, you know, you have using a good tool maybe for nefarious reasons. You could think of drones, military warfare, or something as easy as having a drone drop groceries to your lawn. So in some of the medical sciences, viruses that have been eradicated, why are they still in the labs in the deep freezer? In computer engineering, you have reverse software, you have hacking, you know, the WikiLeaks from the previous few years. So all of that can be used for dual purposes. So let's think about it. I have a question for you. So as a scientist or researcher, to whom do you have responsibilities? So I don't know if you're online right now, you want to put it in the chat, or I can pose this question to my colleagues and see what they can identify.
Oh, you want us to answer?
Sure.
Okay. Let's bring Lenny in.
Oh,
Yes.
I was resting over here.
I think you have responsibilities to your colleagues, people you work with, your employers, an institution like the university you work for, and yourself, because you want to have integrity. That's really important.
You have responsibility toward the people that will read the research. Make sure that it's accurate and current and the points you made.
That's right. So if you can click. So here, right, you have your own self, you have your colleagues, but you have your profession as well. You're an institution, and don't forget the general public, because if it's a grant funded, their tax dollars are paying for this research, and they need to trust in you, as well as the environment. So that could be the land use, that could be water, that could be, the animals or the humans. So think of it on a global perspective. So that's a lot of pressure to put on scientists or researchers. And I always say, not only good science is ethical science, but good ethical research as well.
And we also monitor the environment in our research.
Exactly. So let's move on to the specific component of responsible conduct of research, of understanding what is exactly research misconduct. So it's the fabrication of data, which is making up data or results and recording them or reporting on them. You have your falsification of data. Now this is the manipulation of research, and it could be as far as equipment or processes or emitting data. So think about it if you are using a microscope and you increase the intensity, or you're looking at slides and you change the intensity of the color, or you do some cropping of images and you don't record it. That changes the results, right? So you really need to be transparent. You need to log what your changes are so you have accurate results. And you have the plagiarism. So we'll go a little more into that in some coming up slides, but overall it is the stealing of someone's ideas, work, words without giving the proper credit. So I do want to stress that this does not include honest error or differences of opinion. So that really has to be taken into mind. And this is not something that I came up with as far as the definition. This, in the US, this is federal policy. So this is recorded, it's on record. So this is kind of the standard of what defines research misconduct, and it builds up from there. So let's think about it. When we are talking about data, so we're going to break down each of the components of RCR. So when we talk about data, how do you define data? And I will ask my esteemed colleagues here.
How do we define data?
Yeah, think about it. What are data?
The results from the research.
It's new information that you've collected. It's collection. That's how I think of it.
Right, and so that could be the measurements, facts, observations. So anything that helps you form decision making. Okay, so what are your examples of data? So far, or what you see is all visual data, but is that the only type of data available?
Let's see.
Well, you can have your qualitative and quantitative survey results, microscope slides, climate patterns. You have algorithms for software, computer simulations, even creative works such as musical scores, videotapes, photographs, anything that's created in the laboratory. So you really need to think widely about the definition of data and how it applies. Okay, so here are some examples of fabrication of data, and it's just not this is a global issue. And these are just some examples, and it comes in every discipline, every form, every variety, at every level within science. You know, you have from Harvard and Huntington's disease to Journal of Neuroscience and Nutrition about taste buds, tomato studies. So it happens in every discipline.
Those are good examples.
Yeah.
They're great examples.
And here's some falsification of data. And it just doesn't happen with students, grad students, faculty. It happens with, you know, Nobel Peace Prize winners, prominent physicists, even in management. So again, every discipline. And it hits governments. It hits medical schools. It can hit institutions. So I've showed you we've went over the definitions of data, falsification, fabrication of data. We've also shown you a few examples of research misconduct of data. But what can you do to understand the different types of data? So the Department of Health and Human Services, they have a center, the Office of Research Integrity, and they put together some really, really good videos on data misconduct. And some of the videos can last up to 30 minutes with questions. So if you're in a classroom setting or want to really delve into the different types or the different roles of data from different people on the team, you have that option. But the playlist, 2 or 3 minutes, you know, about data cherry picking, determining which data to bring out to prove your point, as opposed to showing the whole scale of your data, as well as struggling to get the results, or proceeding with raw data or not. So these are some really good short tutorials and videos to kind of get you thinking about different types of data misconduct. So one thing you can do to help with the fabrication of data, avoiding it, or even recognizing it, this is a really good website about guidelines for best practices in image processing. And each of these examples, if you click on the picture, it'll take you more in depth. So I don't think they're hyperlinked, but with the URL. But think about this with your data. Imaging, saving the original, making simple adjustments, cropping, magnification, pixelation, intensity measurements. So using filters, all of these have to be taken into consideration when you are doing your research. So, and all of this too with data, keeping a lab notebook. And, you know, with this project, Feed the Future, there are a lot of projects going on. There's one person responsible for the overall project. So how are all of these data points managed? How are they practiced? How are you keeping track of the data you're responsible for? So hopefully you're keeping a notebook, and the importance of keeping a lab notebook. So it helps with the complete record of your work, what you've done, and to maintain your rights or findings, because with especially this large of a project, you want to get credit for the work that you're doing. You also need to prove it. So keeping a notebook, keeping it's almost like a diary, right? So because this can turn into articles, this can turn into future grants, because you're building on new knowledge. If you want it to take it, you know, to the next level for intellectual property, for patenting, you need this proof. And also, you're leaving a trail of your work. So say you leave a project, you want someone to be able to pick up where you left off. And you're serving multiple audiences, right? Not only for yourself, but your colleagues, and you have a responsibility to produce your results to the funding sources. So hopefully, when you are doing your lab work, you have best practices for the lab notebook. And, you know, even following your own culture within the lab, everyone has, you know, different practices. Keeping a separate notebook for each project. So you don't want to, you know, allot 10 pages for project A and then page 20, project B, but then you have to go back to A. So it's really important to keep separate notebooks for each project. Make sure you list the dates. Make sure you have the same metadata, or how you are cataloging the data. Everyone, it's readable. And if you're working in different languages, what language are you using? So all of that is very important. And that comes with recording of the procedures, and do it immediately. You don't want to say, oh, I'm too tired today, I'll get it tomorrow. Well, that can also lead to sloppiness. It can lead to errors. So again, almost every agency, association, and discipline, they have good lab practices. So that's a good place to start to develop your own ideas. The use of electronic lab notebooks, they are becoming more popular, because I don't know about you, but I have very sloppy handwriting, so I feel sorry for anyone who tries to read my notes. And so with an electronic lab notebook, it makes it a lot easier and manageable when a lot of people are looking over your research. So hopefully that kind of concluded an overview of the data practices. Do any of you have questions with data before we move on to the last component of research misconduct?
No, let's go ahead.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. So plagiarism, avoiding it. But first of all, we have to understand it. So what are the top reasons people plagiarize? So especially with students, you're just not interested in the assignment, right? Or if you have an assignment in your lab, why, you know, you're going to put it off. And that can lead to mistakes. Or you don't budget the time. Okay, so you're saying, oh, you know, Lenny gave me all these great resources, so I don't have to find them, so I can do all my research in an hour. Well, think about it. So you have issues maybe with connectivity. You have issues with the database being down, like we saw with CGAR. We can't find the search functions now, and you really relied on that. So, you know, make sure whatever time you allot, times it by 3. You're not sure of the topic, or you're not knowledgeable, and this is where you need to be really honest with yourself, work with the people in your lab for guidance, for mentoring, and understanding what is needed of you. And not knowing the rules for citing properly. So 2 weeks ago, we went over citation management, and so this is where it comes in. It's very crucial to understand how to cite, what to cite, and make it streamlined. So there's 5 different, there's probably more, but the top 5 are stealing, misquoting, insufficient paraphrasing, patch writing, and self-plagiarism. So stealing, that's pretty much the federal definition of, you know, taking someone's work and not giving them credit. Misquoting is where you are a little too close to the original source and not summarizing effectively. Insufficient paraphrasing, not giving the credit, and again, too close to the source. So patch writing, this is, I think, one of the easiest ways to look at plagiarism. And this is where, think of it as a mashup, where you're taking sentences, ideas, text from a variety of sources and rolling it all up into your own. So without giving the credit. And this is easily identifiable because everyone has their own Yeah, everyone has their own style of writing. You know, if, for example, you write in the past tense and you start taking sentences that are in the active voice, it's very obvious in your paper. So, and also self-plagiarism. And this is a biggie because you need to cite yourself if you have done previous work. And this doesn't mean only if it's published. It could be a report that you haven't turned in, because the whole goal is you're building new knowledge. So you need to give appropriate credit, even to yourself, when you're writing new ideas, new papers.
Let me point out this graphic here.
Yes.
No cut and paste.
That's right.
It's cute.
So, you know, again, like we saw with data, plagiarism happens at all levels within research. Here's some examples about, you know, a plant biologist. They made up some papers. We have a duplication and a retraction. So again, that was self-plagiarism, as well as a high-profile health policy researcher from Dartmouth. He just resigned from his position based on plagiarism charges. So one of the things you can do to avoid research misconduct, and I've talked about transparency a lot, is when you are working in a lab, when you're working in a multi-group, to come up, and they actually have a name for this, a prenup for scientists. So talk about your projects, your goals, your planning ahead of the project, not during the middle, not when an issue comes up, but before. So what are the issues? What are the goals? What are the outcomes? What are the products? And everyone needs to be aware of this, regardless of how much time that they have on the project. Also, when is the project over? Because you may only allot yourself a year or two, but then there's the grant or the project gets an extension for 4 years. So how do you handle those transitions? What do you get credit for, and how you get credit? And also the whose roles, who has what role and what procedures, responsibilities, and the expected level of contribution from each participant. So I know this sounds maybe common sense, but these types of ideas are what gets people into trouble because it hasn't been communicated. So examples, when to report research misconduct. So if you suspect fraud, accounting responsibilities, fiscal responsibilities, computer misuse, employee relations, grant misconduct, scientific misconduct. So these are based on the UF Office of Compliance, but they really are generic enough that it can be applied across the board. So with the definition of research misconduct, we have requirements for findings of research misconduct. And one of those is there has to be a significant departure of accepted practices within that research community. Also, it has to be committed intentionally or knowingly or recklessly. Remember I said honest errors and differences of opinion do not count. As well as you have to have a preponderance of proof of the evidence, that you just can't suspect it, you can't hear gossip, you need to have hard evidence, and this is where you need to document everything along the way. Okay, and this is federal policy. So this isn't just a US-driven initiative. There's worldwide support. So the USAID actually has a scientific research policy on ethics. You have some Austrian research integrity, European network research integrity offices. The WHO has ethics in different regions, Americas, the Mediterranean, Southeast Asia. There's also the Council of Scientific Editors, International Medical Journal editors. Every society has their own ethics. So it's very important to identify all of these different types of research integrity definitions. So when you suspect research misconduct, what happens? So the best way is to start out with an informal conversation, because it could be an honest error. You know, someone could have added an extra digit when they were doing their data entry for the data. Or they could have just forgotten to write down, oh, I forgot that I intensified the magnification of the microscope. So having that informal conversation, no harm, no foul. But if it continues and you've documented it, now you need to maybe bump it up to the supervisor level. Then if that doesn't work, you need to contact the PI or the faculty person, because if it's grant sponsored, then it becomes a formal investigation where the institution is involved, the granting agency is involved, or if it's a journal article, then the publisher is involved. But there are definitely processes and procedures that have to be followed. So with that, understanding the research project management lifecycle and what it is, what components follow a life cycle really help with learning how to recognize the different types of research misconduct. You always need to be transparent and have thorough record keeping. Don't be afraid to speak up, because it is your obligation to do so. And make sure if you're working in large projects or starting a project, everyone is on the same page with respect to what they need to do, the expectations, and the procedures. So that's all I have, and I want to thank you. If you have any other questions or would like to see presentations on any of the research components, please let me know, and I'm happy to share my information with you.
All right, excellent.
Overview.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Leonard, for your wisdom and knowledge that you've shared with us over these over the series of webinars. I just want to remind everyone that this is the 5th webinar, so congratulations to us for making it through all 5, and hopefully some of our viewers have also made it through. And I want to remind them that you can look on our website, the Livestock Lab here, this website, if you want to find it quickly, you can just Google Livestock Lab and this will pop up quickly, and then go to the events section to find these webinars. And this was the 5th one, Ethics in Research Publications, but don't forget the other 4 that are also full of very interesting and useful content. So I think because we're a little short on time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up and just ask if you want to have any final comments about your hopes for people who are using this information, particularly our researchers overseas.
Well, we covered a lot of different topics, and like in the ethics, we snuck in more free resources. So when I look back at it all, I think you have to decide before your project. Now, I remember those webinars. Now, what should I do? What information were they giving me that might be helpful in organizing this research? So I think from my perspective, it's more on a need basis, or like you're coming into setting up a project and you say, let me review those ethics issues. Because, you know, the idea of the prenuptial agreement,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the same problems happen everywhere in academia throughout the world. So just keep those in mind. And when you're looking for literature, or you want search strategies, or you want ethics issues, to go back to the webinars. We'd appreciate that.
All right, you agree, Michelle?
I completely agree. So, you know, the overall theme here is planning. You know, have a plan, develop a plan of what you want to do. Review our resources. We've given you 5 seminars on how to do your research, how to find the resources to do your research, how to manage your research, and wrapping it up with, okay, now you're ready to start your project, and what to do to have a successful project.
Excellent.
Good luck.
Exactly,
Good luck.
yeah, best of luck. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this around and just say farewell to our viewers, and to remind you that you've been a resource provided by the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. And we encourage you to share this with your friends who maybe are starting their research, people who maybe lack familiarity with these topics and just want some support. I think this is a really great overview and motivator for people who may feel overwhelmed or they're stuck and need to go back to the basics and have successful research.
Can I?
Yeah, we do have one more comment from Lenny.
I think we mentioned this, but if you're in this developing emerging country environment and you're really interested in research, there's a wonderful tool on the internet called Author Aid, which is geared toward your population. And if I'm remembering it correctly, it's AUTHORAID.info. There are links to numerous researches about these ethical issues, about publishing, about how to do a PowerPoint presentation. Plus, you can also try to get a mentor for your project. And it is geared toward this environment. So please look up Author Aid.
Okay.
That's a little plea for that one.
Great. Well, thank you once again to our librarians who shared their knowledge with us. And my name is Jim Harper. I've enjoyed hosting these sessions, and I wish everyone the best as they conduct their research.